We still are riddled with neocons in U.S. foreign policy ranks, are we not? How are we doing at moving our policymakers to the left or more progressive, less Reagan-esque?
The other day I had a radio debate with the neocon figure Kenneth Edelman, who was head of the Arms Control Agency under Bush and I think ambassador to the United Nations. And when I asked what he thought about my book, he said, he said that it was beautifully written. The history was so interesting. I learned a lot, but I thought the thesis was very, very strange. I think it's true that this kind of thinking dominates the American foreign policy establishment. It was actually remarkable to me to see how quickly Obama was either taken in or voluntarily agreed to jump in to this consensus. It was sobering for me. It showed how powerful this magnetic draw is in Washington to bring you right into the center and to bring you into the consensus. So I like to think that there are people out there who have different approaches to this, but cleansing the foreign policy establishment of old thinking is going to be something very difficult. And I guess the only suggestion I could make is that since this is going to be a very long process, it's a generational process of changing opinions, one good thing you can do is join and continue to work with Just Foreign Policy.
Great, thanks. Please do. You'll need to that join button on the webcast page there. One last question. Please comment on your famous My Dinner with Ahmadinejad.
It's true. Last October, when President Ahmadinejad came to New York, I got invited to the dinner. It was a remarkable evening. I was at some hotel here in New York, and of course there were a lot of Iranian demonstrators outside protesting. We were made to wait outside, and finally, after they said the security was making a last sweep of the room, I thought what they were probably doing was making sure all the bugs were in place. In any case, we were about 50 people, so it wasn't just me and Mahmoud. It was very interesting. He came in, he was very soft-spoken. First thing he said was, everybody should have a chance to ask a question. And I want to start with the person over here on my right. And what he did was he went all the way around the room, and he got each of the 50 people there to ask a question. And so that took an hour and a half just to get the questions answered. And then Ahmadinejad started answering them one at a time. And he was not only answering them, but he had written out the name of each person, but since he doesn't speak English, he had to kind of transliterate them and try to repronounce everybody's name, which he made an effort to do, although he didn't do very well with Stephanopoulos. Anyway, when it came time for me to ask my question, I was thinking, I want to ask something unusual, something original. I'd say the large majority of the questions had to do with two subjects. One was the nuclear issue, and the other had to do with the Green Movement and the protests after the election. Those were the logical questions to ask. And in one way or another, more or less everybody was asking about that. I wanted to ask something a little different. And so just based on my own private interests, I came up with this question. And I said, Mr. President, many of us in the United States have heard the name of Mohammad Mossadegh, who was the prime minister of Iran that was overthrown by the CIA in 1953. So could you please tell us what you think about Prime Minister Mossadegh and his overthrow? I fancy to myself that this might have been the first time ever that Ahmadinejad has been asked to talk about Mossadegh in public. I have no way of knowing whether that's true or not, but until someone tells me it's not, I'm going to continue to believe it. And so he had a very short, but I thought actually quite a clever answer. He said, Dr. Mossadegh was a popular prime minister who unfortunately was overthrown. But we don't want to devote too much effort to thinking about and recalling that episode, because if we did, we would never want to talk to the United States. So that was a little bit of interesting geopolitics, and maybe some people in Washington could take a cue from that and look back at some of our own sins and not only worry about other people's.